This podcast brought to you by Hope 103.2.
The Hope Book Club with Katrina Rowe and Natasha Moore, because life's just better with a book.
Welcome to the Hope Book Club with Katrina Rowe and Natasha Moore. Today we're opening up Big Stone Gap by Adriana Trigiani. It's a heartwarming small-town story set around the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. It's also a New York Times bestseller that's been made into a movie. We'll look at a historical fiction series by Australian author Blanche who also happens to be the wife of the legendary and recently departed former Prime Minister Bob Hawke. The Lion's Torment, the third book in her Birth of the Plantagenets series, has just been released. I've wolfed down the latest offering from Australia's new queen of crime fiction, Jane Harper. I thoroughly enjoyed the Outback Queensland setting of The Lost Man. And don't say we didn't warn you. We're going to divulge some highly personal information in this episode. Our fictional crushes, the characters we've fallen in love with, cared a bit too much about, and frankly, hope to marry one day. But first, let's hear from Big Stone Gap by Adriana Trigiani.
For the first time in my life, I feel the thread of who I am unravel. I'm one of those people who swears she knows herself well, who in any given situation can be described and counted on to behave in a certain way. I never yell at people, nor do I make speeches. When things get tense, I usually make a joke, so everyone will feel at ease. But something beyond defending Pearl, beyond standing up for what is right, compelled me to speak. Where did she come from? Who is this voice that isn't going to make nice anymore, but will tell the truth? It isn't Fred Mulligan's daughter. I think of Mario de Shapiro, my father, the man in the picture. Why have I tried to put him aside, thinking him dead and gone, uninterested in the likes of me? But suddenly I know, and I am sure of it as I am sure of myself standing here, that my father is alive, and he is well, and I must find him. I put my hand on my chest, expecting another anxiety attack to come, but it does not. Practical Ave Maria must go. Me, the never-married town pharmacist who was never caught without her first aid kit. Me, so responsible she carries 2 spare tires in her Jeep instead of 1. Me, who has double insurance on everything because she's afraid one of the companies will go out of business and leave me penniless after a flood. Me, the girl who built her life so carefully she never had to ask anybody for anything. I have had it with me. Whoever I was, get mad, Ave Maria. You're alone in this world. You were abandoned. Let that anger fuel the job you must do. Find him. Find your father.
That's from Big Stone Gap by Adriana Trigiani, a heartwarming small-town story set in the Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia. It's been described as a delightfully quirky gem of a book. It tells the story of a 35-year-old single woman, Ava Maria Mulligan, and how her life suddenly changes when a long-kept secret is revealed. Hey, Natasha.
Hi, Katrina.
Now, had you heard much about this before you picked it up?
Well, I'd only very recently heard of it for the first time. I actually read about it in a book that we've previously reviewed, the one where the librarian writes love letters to and breakup notes to her books.
Oh, yeah, Dear Fahrenheit 451 by Annie Spence.
That's right.
Yeah.
So all over this. I loved that book. And one of the books that she talked about was this one. And the letter that she writes to Big Stone Gap basically starts out, Dear Big Stone Gap, where have you been all my life? And she talks about how working at the library, people are always taking out this, I think it's a series of 3 books, and doing it again. And people love this book. And she said that one day she came across someone who was had taken it off the shelf and was in clearly quite an uncomfortable position physically, but had opened the book and started reading it and couldn't stop. And so was kind of half crouched there.
Right, and probably busting for the toilet.
Yeah, but just couldn't put it down. And she was like, okay, I have to read this book. And I think the fact that she talked about, the character who's this strong female character, self-proclaimed town spinster, her name's Ave Maria Mulligan. I think just with those 2 things alone, like spinster and Ave Maria, I was like, you've got me. And, small town America is really fun and it's set in the 70s. And yeah, so I was like, okay, I definitely have to read this book.
Okay. Well, when I hear a book described as heartwarming, I either think it's going to be delightful or it's going to be completely schmaltzy.
Oh, yeah.
So which one is it?
Oh, it's delightful. I think I was looking because I haven't seen the movie. There is a movie from 2014 with Ashley Judd and
Whoopi Goldberg.
Yeah,
I've seen the poster. It does look small-y.
I have read a review that said that the movie is quite sentimental and just a bit
cheesy.
Yeah, definitely. Whereas the book has this kind of charm and sass and stuff that is not like that, and it's quite earthy in some ways. Like the characters are really not perfect, and people are quirky / a bit crazy, but also, there are the local coal mines are threatening to close, and Ave Maria finds out that in the first chapter, so it's not really a spoiler, that her father, who died some years ago, was not her real father, and the whole town knows within 5 seconds of her finding out. And, she's kind of figuring out who she is. So it could be cheesy, but because I think the characters have such traction with you and they're so interesting and entertaining without being
stereotypical.
Yeah, exactly. They feel like real people, and I wonder about the extent to which they are real people, in that the writer grew up in this town, Big Stone Gap. She hasn't even changed the name.
Wow.
And I don't know if these are
real people? Yeah. Well, I think you do need, in a small town story, a sort of a cast of enduring and sort of quirky characters, Otherwise it would be boring, right?
Yeah, that's right. And even though they are a bit strange, some of them, there's a very non-judginess about it, in spite of the gossipiness of a small town. So even one of her best friends is Ivor Lou Wade, who, she describes as basically... She says that she's got being a woman down, right?
Okay.
She says if you painted her, she'd be sitting on a pink cloud with gold leaf edges showing a lot of leg. That gives you a feel for the writing here.
Yeah.
She's so Ivor Lou is kind of she runs the town bookmobile.
Oh, nice.
So she drives around in the bookmobile and every guy in town is in love with her and she's a terrible flirt. And that could be a character that you'd dislike in a lot of ways for the way she dresses or the way she acts. But, Ave Maria, who's very different, a very kind of practical, down-to-earth, she's a pharmacist, she's chief of the rescue squad, she dresses in overalls rather than in skirts.
Right, so she's a go-getter.
They're very different people, but they're really good friends.
Yeah.
And
well, you couldn't hate someone who runs the bookmobile, Natasha.
No, quite.
Because I lived in a town that had a bookmobile and, we loved the bookmobile.
Oh, there you go. I mean, this is a very foreign concept to me. I don't really...
Well, because, if you don't really have any shops in your town and then the library comes on wheels and it comes once a week or every 2 weeks, it's quite exciting when the bookmobile rolls into town and everybody turns out. It's like a social event.
Oh, I'm such a city girl.
For the old ladies, mainly. I think not many of the farmers come out for the bookmobile.
When Ivor Lou Wade is driving the bookmobile.
Oh, the farmers come out.
Everyone comes out for the bookmobile, yeah.
Oh, that's great. So what did you enjoy about this?
I loved the character of Ave Maria. And, sort of the gap between how she obviously sees herself, she's the narrator, and how other people see her. So you've got that kind of unreliable narrator, narrative irony stuff going on. Even in the way that she sees the men who feature in the novel. I liked the men.
Okay.
I like, the main guy is this guy called Jack McChesney. He's like a coal miner and, the sort of strong silent type. But he's also just a really lovely, gentlemanly guy.
Sounds good. Yeah.
And
so there's romance there, I assume.
There is some romance involved. Yes.
Okay.
Without giving spoilers. And really I just liked the town and I enjoyed the writing. It's not there were moments where I felt like either it kind of skipped over things that I thought it would go into a lot more or it took a lot longer over something that I thought it wouldn't. So it's kind of got a weird feel to it. Not everyone in my book club loved this, but I enjoyed the characters and I thought it was funny enough that I really didn't mind.
Okay. And so what would you, compare it to?
I think to me it feels a lot like the small town America version of the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society book. Lots of people love that book.
Yeah.
It has that whole kind of these very eccentric characters who come together and, get on well together despite how different they are, and it's funny and... Yeah, I think just even though, that book's set in World War II and is quite quite a lot of distressing things happen in it, you do have that feeling of like, oh, this just makes me happy reading this book.
Yeah, totally.
And
it's
I
comforting.
felt that way with Big Stone Gap.
Well, that sounds great. Now, our next pick is a historical fiction series by Australian author Blanche d'Albufex. Now, she was, of course, well known as Bob Hawke's biographer back in his ACTU days. Later, she did become his wife. She'd written a number of novels, biographies and essays, and then after a break, she has returned to her love of fiction. So her Birth of the Plantagenets series, it's been pitched as historical fiction for lovers of Wolf Hall and Game of Thrones. It's set back in the 12th century and is a story of vengeance, passion and political intrigue that one reviewer said puts the story back into the history. I liked that. So Blanche d'Albufex, she's a pretty interesting character. She's had a fascinating life, and I can only imagine that would enrich her writing.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about historical fiction, I guess, is that not that I know that much about her, but you don't necessarily see any of her in this book.
No.
It feels very much like you're in the 12th century and you have a very vivid sense of what life is like in the 12th century, and like it's quite immersive like that. I wasn't thinking Bob Hawke's wife wrote this book.
No, well, that's good. Well, I mean, I guess what I was saying when she's had a really rich life is she's travelled a lot. She's done a lot of different things. Spent a lot of
time in Asia and...
Yeah, and I feel like that gives her really... I mean, for a writer, I think that's great background to have because you understand all sorts of different types of perspectives in life. Now, these books, of course, as you said, they go right back in time and they focus on Henry II. What kind of character is he?
Well, so I've read the first book so far in the series, which is called The Young Lion, and at the start of that, Henry's quite young. At the very beginning, he's like 14. I mean, one of the things that struck me about the book is how young everybody is, because I suppose people die younger. And so, the first book is much more, he's kind of growing up and wanting to retake the throne that his mother, Matilda, was denied. So his grandfather, Henry I, he wants to follow in his footsteps, but currently his cousin, Stephen, is ruling in England. So he's kind of, he'll be the Duke of Normandy and Anjou, so he's in France. And really most of the first book is about his father, Geoffrey, who is like, the patriarch, but he's like 33 or something.
Oh, right. Starts. Oh, wow.
But, he's old in this kind of
because people didn't live that long.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of ways to die, as you discover in the book.
Well, this is
in the 12th century.
What I wanted to know. So 12th century, I don't know a lot about this kind of time period. Like, what was medieval Europe like back then?
Yeah, I mean, based on this book, it was, there's lots of, one review I read said it's all sex, slaughter and subterfuge. So if she's right about it, that's what the 12th century was like. So everyone's kind of sleeping with everybody. There's a lot of political intrigue and, military engagements going on, shuffling about of power and dynasties. And lots of people lying about lots of things.
Okay. So look, all the intrigue, there's there's the vengeance, there's the passion, but what's the focus of the novel?
That's a good question. It might depend as to the reader, as to what each individual reader thinks the focus is. I mean, a lot of it is about Eleanor of Aquitaine, who at the time, in kind of 1149, at the start of the book, is the wife of Louis the Seventh, I think.
So a French king?
One of the King of France, yeah. So she's the Queen of France. She's not so happy about that. Not very happy in her marriage. From the start is having an affair with our Geoffrey, the Duke of Aquitaine, who is, falling in love with her but also kind of scheming for his son. And, she has not had a son in the kind of 10 or 15 years of marriage with Louis.
So she doesn't have an heir to the throne.
There needs to be an heir to France. So there's all this kind of manoeuvring between church and state, and can we annul this marriage? And, who's kids is she having, given that she's not exactly faithful to her husband. Of course, the extra element when you're reading a novel like this is that obviously it's embellishing the history, but all of this is history. So I'm kind of fighting the urge to go and Google who actually ends up as king when and who ends up married to who. And because, in fact, in history, Eleanor of Aquitaine, who is having an affair with Geoffrey, ends up married to his son Henry II, and she ends up Queen of England.
Wow.
So that hasn't quite happened yet at the end of the first novel, but there's, you know, like a bit of manoeuvring in how you get from one spot to the other and what seems inconceivable at the start of the novel.
And did you find it sort of hard to follow? Because when I watched Wolf Hall, the TV series, I really struggled to keep up with the political machinations of that time.
No, I didn't at all. And I think this is part of the gift of a novel like this. I don't read heaps of historical fiction, and I haven't read Wolf Hall, sadly. I'm sure I should.
Right.
But because they're such distinct characters and you see them interacting with each other, you're very clear on who is who.
Okay.
And although that being said, she also does helpfully provide a family tree at the front of the book that I looked at quite frequently trying to figure out, and a cast of characters so that you can figure out who belongs to who and who's related to who and all that kind of thing.
So what did you enjoy about this?
I enjoyed getting a sense of 12th century life. You know, I'm no medieval historian. I don't know how accurate it is, but she talks about things that, I mean, I didn't necessarily want to hear quite as much about 12th century toilets as she puts in, but, you know, all that kind of detail of what life was actually like at the time, and medical details, all of that kind of thing was quite vividly drawn. I appreciated that. I really liked the relationships, as turbulent and, you know, disturbing as they sometimes were. And there's kind of a supernatural element through it, which is very understated. But just these kind of moments where you're like, oh, maybe there's kind of more going on here. There's still a kind of, especially, you know, some of the book is set in Scotland, and sort of the wilds of England and Wales, and
the spiritual elements.
Yeah, this kind of almost druidic, or, you know, people being able to communicate with animals, or just kind of these little touches that maybe feel a little bit Game of Thrones, or just, I thought, kind of added to it, made it something extra.
If you had the luxury of time, would you want to go on and read the rest of the series?
Yeah, I think I will go on and read the series. I don't know how quickly I'll be able to, but I really want to know what happens now. I mean, and I can Google that, right? Like I have been looking up the Plantagenets and the Angevins and figuring out the succession and who's going to... But I want to know what happens to them personally, right?
Because
obviously they're... I care about them as fictional characters, not just as historical figures. Although that being said, looking at what happens to Henry later on, you know, from looking at Wikipedia, his sons and his wife are going to rise up against him, and I'm a bit sad about that.
Well, look,
because you like Henry.
Well, it's a really good sign. If you actually care about the characters, that is a sign of a great book.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
This kind of brings me to our next conversation point, Natasha, because, you know, if caring about a character is a sign of a good book, you know, what if it goes a step further than caring about them? I want to talk about the idea of a fictional crush. Now, I mean, it's slightly odd, I know. But look, women tend to read books with some romantic elements in it, and it's only natural that from time to time you go, oh, I wish I could have a bit of that. So have you ever had a fictional crush?
I mean, you'd think so, right? Like, I feel sure that I have, and yet somehow I don't have immediate ones that spring to mind. I mean, we do, like, I have friends who we have at various times in our lives identified as various Austen characters, and therefore everyone has the Austen hero that they prefer. That's, you know, there are a lot of girls I know who are Captain Wentworth girls.
Well, Captain Wentworth is the logical choice. I personally was, well, Mr. Darcy. Like, I had a crush.
It's just that I'm a Lizzie, so
Yeah,
I think
you need a Darcy.
It has to be Darcy.
Well,
yeah.
I had a Darcy crush in school, and we actually used to refer to him as Mr. Darcy.
Oh, right, a real person.
Yes, so a guy that I had a crush on in real life,
Right.
that was kind of a
You're
Mr. Darcy
Oh, there you
character.
go. Yeah.
But, you evolve as you get older.
Yeah, you're telling me I should have outgrown that. Is that
Well, I think that's...
Okay, you go, and then I'll tell you about mine.
Okay. Well, if we're going with our fictional crush, like the one that I would have to go for would be Rochester from Jane Eyre. I think...
Oh, who needs to evolve now? Have a grown-up relationship.
Well, it's just the fact... Okay, he's very flawed. I get that. His past is terrible. He'd probably have certain diseases.
Don't you think he'd be abusive?
Rochester?
Yeah, don't you think he's kind of quite controlling? And, it's all very, dashing and romantic, but also
This is my fantasy crush.
Yeah, sure.
This is not my one I would marry in real life.
Okay.
But what I loved about him was his little speech where he said, that I feel like if you were to leave, that I would take to bleeding inwardly. I love how expressive he was of his feels. Yeah. But I agree, he's a little messed up. But, but in real life,
I suppose,
the one I would actually fall for would be Dawsey from the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. The quiet farmer, he's caring, he's kind, he's a bit reserved, he doesn't say exactly what he's thinking. That's the guy I would actually fall for. Yeah.
So, how personal are we going here? Is your husband like Dawsey?
Well, maybe. Everyone has a certain type that they tend to notice, and for me, it's the one that it's harder to get something out of often.
Yeah, interesting.
Because it's more, you work harder for that little bit of intimacy.
As opposed to Rochester, who speaks in poetry.
Look, it's fiction. We're talking fiction. What is yours?
Okay, well, so I was surprised that I struggled to think of this so much, but you're right, it does end up being a type, because I was thinking about how, partly it's, I was thinking of the Georgette Hire men.
Wow.
Who are very different kinds of guys, but the thing that they always are is they're very calm and capable.
Oh, I like that.
Kind of in control of the situation.
Yeah.
And yeah, you shouldn't really like Georgette Hire heroes, but I think I do.
There's got to be kindness there for me as well. That's the essential thing.
Yeah.
Kindness.
Well, and I think so. Yes. Funny you should mention Guernsey. Yeah. Because I also think, reading Big Stone Gap, I really liked Jack Mack. Not everybody in my book club did. They were not that keen on him, which makes me think that they wouldn't necessarily like men that I like. Okay. But he's kind of the strong, silent, practical type. And yeah.
That's very like Dawsey from Guernsey.
Yeah, it is, but I feel like reading Guernsey, you don't really feel that the first time around. You just think it's surprising that they end up together. First time you read that book, because you don't really realise that that's what Dawsey is like until
you
quite
don't
a long way through
think
the book.
He feels for her. You kind of can
just
see
think
her
that
feeling for him.
He's a bumpkin farmer. You legit do. I think in the letters, there's no indication that he's actually quite
deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and profound. Yeah, maybe. Okay.
So you're right, digging for gold.
Well, I think we need another fictional hero. I think if this is telling us anything, it's that he hasn't been written yet.
Well, there is a lot of potential here.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to move on to my pick for this episode, Natasha, and I have been reading The Lost Man by Jane Harper.
Yeah, you're all across the Jane Harper. I haven't read any yet.
Yeah, so she's a new Australian author. So her first book was The Dry, it was a murder mystery, only came out a couple of years ago, and it made a big splash. And look, I read it, I enjoyed it, but I was also like, what's all the fuss about? It was fairly conventional murder mystery. It starts with a body. Then there's the cop with a past who blows through town, happens to be there for the funeral. Secrets all come out. It was really well structured, and it was a great page turner.
I feel like if you don't super enjoy the novel of someone's that you've read, I tend not to go on and read another one of theirs.
Well, I liked it. I enjoyed reading it. And it was really well plotted. But I guess the thing for me, the deal breaker, was that the writing was nothing special. Like it was fine, but it wasn't noticeable, if you know what I mean.
And yet you went and read this one.
Yeah, I went and read this. Well, it was partly because my book club did it, but it was partly because I knew it would be a good, easy read as well. Like I did enjoy reading The Dry, but I just didn't get why people were so nuts about it. So in between The Dry and this one, there was another book, Force of Nature, and people generally said, oh yeah, it was okay, not as good as The Dry. This one though, The Lost Man, I really enjoyed. So for me, one of the key differences was The Dry was set in a small rural town during a drought. And, you know, people kind of raved about, oh, how well she captured that small town thing. But for me, as someone who did grow up in a small town, I was like, no, she didn't quite nail it for me. To me, it read like an outsider looking at a small town, not someone who actually grew up in one. So that for me didn't quite ring true. But this was, I think with this one, it was a step up. Like I felt like she really nailed the Outback setting. So it's set in Outback, Queensland. You know, in the whole book, there was probably only one or two expressions that she got that weren't quite right, if you know what I mean. Yeah. Where the lexicon was just slightly off. Is she the one who's not
Australian originally?
She was English, yeah. I think she's been here for maybe, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, something like that. But she got these little details of Outback life, like the cool room, you know, the generator being turned off at night, the little cabins, or we used to call them dongas, that surround the homestead where the backpackers stay. Those kind of little aspects of the Outback life, which the way they use the two-way radios, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And is it a murder mystery again?
Well, this is interesting. It's sort of a murder mystery. It's a little bit less conventional in that there is a body, yes. There is someone responsible. It's not a murder in the straightforward way.
Wow, this is very cryptic.
It doesn't have a detective. There's no cop. There's just the main character. So we're sort of on a journey with the main character, but it's not just about solving the mystery. There's all this personal growth as well that's going on. So that makes it different to the conventional murder mystery for me. Like he does investigate, he does solve the mystery, but it's as much about reconciling with the past as it is about getting the outcome. So it's about understanding what's led them to where they're at, if you know what I mean. So I like that.
Do you think I should read it?
If I was telling someone, I would say start with this one, as in I think the writing's stronger and I felt she owned the characters a lot more. Yeah, I'd say read it for sure. I mean, if the only complaint I probably had about it, if I have to find one, is that maybe it kind of all wrapped up a bit too quickly. Like the last, I'd say 9 to 10 chapters all take place within a 24-hour period from Christmas Eve to sort of after Christmas lunch. And in that time, like literally everything gets resolved.
Oh, that's really interesting, though.
I mean, it feels longer, but when you look back, you're like, that'll happen in a day, you know?
Some days are more eventful than
well, it's Christmas. This can happen when everyone's in a, close-quartered environment. I mean, I read it in a week, which for me, without much time, is quick. You know, it's just a good holiday read. Yeah, it's fun.
Great.
Yeah. Very Aussie too. Yeah. All right. Well, that wraps up this edition of the Hope Book Club. In this episode, we've reviewed Big Stone Gap by Adriana Trigiani, The Young Lion by Blanche and The Lost Man by Jane Harper. We'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Email bookclub@hopemedia.com.au. And thanks for listening to the Hope Book Club, because life's just better with a book.
Thanks for listening. Start your day with life words. Subscribe to Hope 1032's free daily email devotional at hope1032.com.au.